Well, good afternoon to you all. You know, I think it was when I was just about 12 years old, there was a day like this, just one of those days where it was just kind of, pretty bad outside. And my friends and I, that was back when being outside was kind of fun, and we did go outside and play, but we really couldn't that day. And so there we were kind of cooped up in my house, and there we were in the living room, and we decided that, we could still have some fun. So we invented a new game. Pillow football. No, the couch pillow was going to be the football, and there were four of us, two on offense, two on defense, and we'd have to stay on our knees because, the room was a little tight. And so we were having a grand old time, running little plays and doing all these different things. And I got to admit, we were really having fun right up until that lamp crashed on the floor. And in my mind, just right away, kind of like the prodigal son when he was returning to the father, started to prepare what I was going to say to my father when he got home, because I knew he wasn't going to be happy. And so as soon as my dad comes into the house, I go rushing right up to him, and I say to him, "Dad, I'm sorry." And he looks at me and goes, "For what?" I said, "I broke the lamp." There was that long pause, and he goes, "Okay, but what are you sorry for?" "Well, I broke the lamp." He says, "You know what? I want you to go up to your room, and I want you to think about this for a little while." And I have to admit, I was completely lost. I thought I had it all figured out. I said, "I got this down. I'll just apologize. I'll just admit to it, get it done with, get it over with." And he still wasn't happy. And so literally, I stewed for a couple of hours, just trying to figure out what he was going on about. There was a couple that came into me one time, and they sat in front of me, and they just were not getting along. They were just kind of going at each other, back and forth, doing what I like to call bean counting. "You did this to me. Well, you did this to me. Well, you did this." And it just kept going on for a little while. And so at one point, the young woman just looks at her then husband and says to him, "You throw your socks on the floor all the time." Now, I was kind of curious myself why this would be an issue. He says, "Well, fine, what do you want me to do?" She goes, "Well, put your socks in the hamper." He goes, "Well, fine, I'll put my socks in the hamper. What's the big deal?" She goes, "It's not really that big a deal, except for the fact that every time you do it, it bothers me. My father wanted me to say that what I did wrong was not obey the rules that he had laid down. No roughhousing. You remember the word roughhousing? You're not allowed to roughhouse? No roughhousing. We weren't supposed to be doing those kinds of things. And the disrespect it showed him that I didn't care about his wishes was what he wanted me to apologize for. To come to that recognition that it's not just about the rules. The rules are there for order in society. The rules are there for us to be able to exist in this world and know where the boundaries are. But violating rules, there are times when there are certain rules that might be out there that may have to be violated for some reason or another. It's not about the rule, it's about the person. Because all sin has to do with a person. Today's first reading and today's gospel, I think, are beautiful. They are so powerful in trying to say to us human beings, to speak to us in such a way as to remind us that God is still God. You hear that first reading? First off, you get blessings and woes in both of them. Cursed is the man who relies on humanity, who turns to his fellow man and expects him to be his savior, expects him to, but notice what he says, who turns his heart from the Lord. Turning our heart from the Lord, that's a euphemism for saying the man sinned. He became self-reliant. He became self-absorbed. He became so caught up in himself that he forgot about God. He forgot about God. And that's what offends God. Go off and, whatever sin, ask for forgiveness. But remember, when you say you're sorry to God, for what? For hurting you, Lord. For sinning against you, Lord. For not respecting you enough, Lord, to show my love for you. We so often forget that. Jesus giving those blessings and the woes. You all have families. You all live together. What are some of the things within your families that require you to do if you truly love your fellow family members? Now, a lot of times I throw that question out there. Respect for one another, of course, but notice that what Jesus was doing is this whole thing of, but you may yourself have to delay your gratification to receive your reward. Isn't that what works well in the family? You know, if it's always me, I, give, and I never give back, what kind of a family life is that going to be? Just not going to work. And so we always have to remind ourselves that blessed are you who are hungry, but you will be satisfied. Don't worry about it. But if you're satiated now, you will not be in the kingdom. And so let's be clear about this. God can be offended. And when we have offended God in our sin, we need to do something about it. Now, I know in my own life, there have been times when I've come to recognition of sins that I've committed that all of a sudden there's something that happens inside of me. And that's what we talked about last week. Forgiven is a way of life. We have to live forgiven. But that means we have to come to a recognition not only that we've sinned, but be sorry for it. Sorry for what? How many times my mother said that to me when I was growing up? And I got better and better at seeing what they meant. Sorry for what? But then comes that second part. Not only getting over the pride that we talked about last week, of being humble before the Lord and being able to admit that we've done something, now to do something about it. And the second stage of true reconciliation with God is confessing. Saying out loud what you did. That's kind of what my father wanted me to do. And I had to grapple with it, and I had to feel it, and I had to go through it. Saying what you did. You know, I think it was Pope Pius XII who had said, we are on a dangerous path because we're losing the sense of sin. And I can say today, hearing confessions especially from so many people, that there are a lot of people that have lost the sense of sin. They really don't do a good examination of conscience sometimes before coming into the confessional, and they walk in and throw out these nebulous statements. You know, Father, I'm sorry because I felt prideful. Okay. Give me a little context or something, because I don't hear a sin yet. Sometimes there are things that we do that we might feel a little prideful. That's not sinful. I'm not crushing you because I'm better than you. There's a whole difference. So give me a little more context. Take sometimes, you know, like it's amazing to me how many people can't say all 10 commandments anymore. I mean, when I was in Catholic school back in the 70s, you had to memorize them. You had to be able to rattle them off. And heaven forbid you weren't able to say all 10 when you were called upon in class. Fast forward years later, I had a bunch of seminarians, and the very first thing I did, I was teaching an entry level. They were all new seminarians in their first year. I just asked them on the first day, you know what, everybody take out a piece of paper, write down the 10 commandments. Out of 14, only one could do it. These are future priests, just mind you. And I said, by the end of the semester, you better all know the 10 commandments. And you know what, throw in the precepts for good measure. There's 5 precepts. Take the commandments one by one. If you really want to dig deeper and be forgiven and understand forgiven and then be able to live forgiven, take those commandments and probe deeper. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods. Now, when God said that, people would look around and they saw in the world there were so many other gods. These were known gods. These were gods that other cultures had been worshiping. I mean, you know, the Greeks had all these different, they had their pantheons, the Romans had their pantheons. They had these places where there were just gods of this and gods of that, and God says, no, none of them. I am your God. Now, a big part of this series that we wanted to do is to help people prepare for Lent. We have to be practical in our preparation, because so many people stumble into Lent every year without much of a plan. What am I going to do to change me during Lent? What am I going to do to change me during those weeks of Lent? And a lot of times on Fat Tuesday, we just, I won't drink soda. Now, how's that going to change you? Well, I need to lose some weight. Well, if you need to lose some weight, start now. Don't wait for that. If it's a health issue, do something about that. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods. And yet, how many people don't recognize the gods in their life? There's the God of money, the God of power that we all want. We want to do this. And so what do? We end up working and working and working, trying to make more money, to gain more status and more prestige. That's a God. It's okay to go out and earn a living. It's great that you can put food on the table. It's wonderful that you have a roof over your head. But as we heard in that first reading, if you've turned your heart from God, cursed may you be. God wasn't kidding. He wasn't trying to say, like, don't worry about it. You can't hurt me. He's God. Maybe I can't hurt him, but he is offended by my actions sometimes because I'm not showing him the love he deserves. So maybe we need to start looking at what our gods are. Now, there are the gods of addiction. Don't wait for Lent. If you have a problem with alcohol, drugs, gambling, prostitution, pornography, get off of it. Go to the help programs and do that now. Don't wait for Lent to do that. But let's say you do have a problem where the computer has become your God. I mean, how many people today worship their God walking down the street like this? You can't even see their face anymore. Has that become your God? Maybe what you need to have in your plan for Lent is to give up screen time. I will not look at my phone 2 days a week. I'll only go for 2 days. I won't go for all 7. 2 days a week, I will not do anything on a computer, except for any work I may have to do, of course, to earn my living. I can go down a whole bunch of different ideas. Turn the television set off for the weeks of Lent. Because we sometimes do worship that glowing thing on our wall. This is how we prepare ourselves. This is how forgiven begins, because we recognize that thing has become more important to me than God, sometimes even to my own family. Take the second commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Now, we've expanded that, of course, to any offensive language. And so many people, again, that come in with the nebulous thing, well, I used bad language. Oh, you mean like you didn't have the correct grammar, so you used the wrong pronoun at the end of the sentence? What? I used bad language. Be specific about what it is. If you've got a foul mouth and you're offending other people, you're offending God, there's a Lenten promise right there. I will start to use charitable language. I will start to speak of the holiness of God. I will share the good news with others. In the bulletin this week are all 10 of the commandments, and there's a little reflection on each one for you to do an examination of conscience. Thou shalt keep holy the Sabbath. Making Sunday not just a day where you come here, and please make sure you tell everybody you know, except of course when there's bad weather or other things, that you should be here every Sunday. But you should want to be here because you love the Lord your God so much that you couldn't imagine not coming on a Sunday. And that missing it, it's like missing an appointment with your best friend for a cup of coffee. Wouldn't your friend be offended if they were sitting there in the shop waiting for you when you never showed up? God can be the same way. He wants you to show up, but he also wants you to take the day and make it holy. Make it a family day. So maybe there's something we could look at too about how we can spend more time in adoration before the Blessed Sacrament, how we can come before the Lord, how we can spend that time forgiven. It happened. He died and rose. I mean, listen to the early scriptures. What's the phrase you hear over and over and over again that we just heard once again from St. Paul? Christ died and rose. Why? For the forgiveness of sin. That's why he died and rose, so that we could get right with God. We could be forgiven. And so what he did once for all. Forgiven is a done deal. Now we have to live it. And so not just ourselves examining our conscience and trying to change, but calling others as well in a loving and compassionate way. I look around our society today, and I just, again and again, I'm amazed that forgiven isn't the way of life. Punishment is the way of life. You wronged me 50 years ago. You still owe me, even though you've said you're sorry for 49 of those 50 years. Even though you've tried to make it up to me again and again. What do they want to do? They still want to punish. That's not who we are as Christians. That's not how we live as Christians. So start to prepare your heart for Lent. Lent is a rich, beautiful time of change, of working on those deeper structures of sin that can possess us, those deeper structures that hold on to us. Take the commandments, put them up somewhere in the house, and look at them every day and just reflect a little bit. Do I have other gods? What consumes the most of my time? That's my God. What do I give the most of myself to? That's my God. And then hear those words, cursed may you be if you've turned to a person or a thing over God. Give him the fullness of your heart. That, my dear brothers and sisters, is forgiven. And forgiven is a way of life. It's how we live our lives. Looking for those opportunities to beg forgiveness for another on purpose, with intent to say, I wronged you, I am so sorry. I did something that hurt you. That's on me, and I want to make up for it. And that's why next week, making up for it, we'll talk about penance. We'll look at some of the other commandments. We'll spend a little more time preparing ourselves for this great season that, let's face it, for the last couple of years has been overshadowed by a pandemic. Let's hope that this year we can actually engage once again in true contrition and the possibility of confession with the purpose of being absolved of all of our sins before God, who loves us so much that he does take seriously whenever we turn away from him. God loves each and every one of you, and he's embracing you right now, and he's saying, don't worry, I've got it. You are forgiven. Now we only just need to ask for it and go forth and live it. God bless you.